Hey, what's up, YouTube world? It is your girl here, the Venusian Bull, and I am back with another video. So what we're going to be doing in this series of videos is we're going to be discussing the planets in the eighth house. Yes, I know a lot of people have been waiting for this house. Anything that has to do with the eighth house, Scorpio, Plutonian things, people are always curious. People are always interested. They always want to see, the mystique of this energy. So we're going to be discussing planets in the eighth house, and I'm going to be doing this a little bit differently, as I'm going to have an introductory video to get through with all of like the kind of housekeeping details and everything that the eighth house contains, because I'm going to go very much into depth, pun intended, with the eighth house as it pertains to the planets and things like that. And I didn't want to have to say the same things over and over at the beginning of the video like I usually do, because it's a lot of information and a lot of knowledge that I'm going to be dropping on y'all. So yeah, there will be a description in the comment box of the actual timestamp of when I get to that planet in as it pertains to the eighth house. So don't worry, if you've seen 3 of these, you can skip through them if need be and go just straight to, sun in the eighth, Mars in the eighth, moon in the eighth, whatever. Okay. All right. So let's discuss the eighth house a little bit. Okay. So I also want to kind of put a trigger warning on these videos, because the eighth house deals with a lot of kind of taboo topics, the things that we don't really, want to discuss, the things that are buried beneath the surface and things like that, such as sex, such as death, anything that's taboo, and that could be deemed taboo or beneath the surface. That could even mean astrology, or tarot or numerology or any type of occult like studies and mediumship, voodoo, hoodoo, all of that shit. You know what I'm saying? Especially when it comes to kind of like worshiping like ancestors and the dead and things like that. The eighth house has to deal with death, so we may be talking about demons and spirits and all of that type of stuff. So again, trigger warning. And this is the trauma house. A lot of the times I always say that Scorpio is the trauma queen, while Leo is the drama queen. So eighth house energy, there's always going to be some type of trauma that needs to be kind of overcome, but you're not going to escape drama. You're not going to escape trauma having eighth house energy. It's kind of inevitable that you will experience certain things. So I went through the basics: sex, death, anything that has to deal with trauma, transformation, regeneration. This is a very transformative placement. You're always changing, always transforming, and it's usually in major ways. This also has to deal with other people's money, as the second house deals with earned income and money that you earn. The eighth house deals with other people's money. So this isn't necessarily money that you work for. This is money that you get from an inheritance, or like spousal support, or like child support, or like a life insurance policy, or something along those lines. And the eighth house also represents debt that you owe. So not only other people's money, but money that you owe to other people. So creditors, like bankruptcy, all of that stuff that we hate, really, right? I also like to think of the eighth house. The eighth house is kind of about turning trash into treasure. It's very much a purging thing. It's about, getting rid of garbage, and things like that, because Scorpio, which rules the eighth house, actually represents, for lack of a better word, excrement. You know what I'm saying? It represents, the waste out of your body. So it could be like literal waste or like figurative waste that you're kind of doing away with. And that kind of goes along with the transformative aspect of the eighth house. And as a reminder to keep in mind that you need to take account the sign that's on the eighth house cusp, as well as the aspects that the planet is making with any other planets in your chart, because this may modify the energy that you are experiencing in the eighth house. So make sure that you take heed of that. Sometimes I state this periodically in other videos, but I want to get this in the first video, the intro video, so that everybody knows that the characteristics that I state for the planet, that I'm speaking about may vary based off of other variables in your chart. So I want to make that very clear, especially when it comes to, the eighth house, because it's so transformative and it's so, intense, it's so in depth that it can mean so many different things. And speaking of intensity and depth, it has to deal with that. It has to deal with intimate bonds, close bonds. It's the next step up from the seventh house, which is like more like commitment and marriage. And the eighth house is that intimate bond that it's not a you and I, it's a we thing when it gets to the eighth house. So it's that as well. And it's, deep, it's about deep connections, and it's about researching, it's about investigating to get down to the bottom and the depths and, the oceans of things. This is a water house. So you have to remember this is an emotional house. People forget that Scorpio is a water sign sometimes, I think, and emotional, because their exterior can be so, you know what I'm saying? It could be very resting bitch face, but remember that this energy needs to feel deeply, like within the depths of their soul. They need to feel right down into their gut. So they need to feel deeply. This house may be prone to experiencing a lot of pain as well, pain and trauma. And usually, in a lot of instances, that's something that people who have this energy, they actually like. So yeah, without any further ado, I'm going to get into the planets in the eighth house. So stay tuned. See ya. All right, y'all. Now let's get into Mars in the eighth house. All right. I know a lot of y'all been waiting for this. And just a little FYI, this also happens to be my placement. So know a little something about Mars in the eighth house, okay? All right, so having Mars in the eighth house is similar to having Mars in Scorpio or having Aries on the eighth house cusp. Also Scorpio on the eighth house cusp, but we're going to kind of associate this more with Aries, because once we get to Pluto, that'll also be like having Scorpio on the eighth house cusp, okay? So again, just for simplicity's sake, Mars in the eighth house is similar to having Mars in Scorpio or having Aries on the eighth house cusp. All right. Now look, y'all. All right. So Mars in the eighth house has an insatiable amount of passion. Look at me using my vocabulary words. Okay. You have to understand that Mars in and of itself is extremely passionate. But then when you put it into the eighth house of like depth and transformation and evolution and sex, it just like elevates that passion. So people with Mars in the eighth house can tend to really go down the rabbit hole when it comes to any type of like research or investigative things. They can really become obsessed with things, topics, particularly of the occult nature, or, sex, or, studying certain things, or, death, or, anything that has to do with like astrology, tarot, or anything like that. Just kind of obsessive, compulsive, like researchers, kind of like Virgo, kind of like sixth house energy, but it's more like, it's like genuinely like what you love. It's not like you're OCD because, oh my God, I'm like all over the place. It's just like, wow, I need to learn more about this, or I need to delve in deeper than this. It's very passion project driven, Mars in the eighth house. So you'll be doing a lot of passion projects type of thing. You'll be obsessed. That may be one of your favorite words. Why I'm so obsessed with me. So that'll be very prevalent. Well, but let's kind of get into the meat and potatoes and why y'all came here to listen to Mars in the eighth house. Okay, the sex. So let me stop. Okay, so listen. Obviously, Mars is the planet of sex. It's the planet of aggression. It's the planet of drive. So this is very much an aggressive and assertive type of placement when it comes to your sexual endeavors or prowess and things like that. Not to get misunderstood with Mars in the fifth house per se, but Mars in the eighth also still likes that very deep connection, those really intimate bonds like Venus in the eighth house. But like Mars in the eighth house, they about putting it down, okay? They are about putting it down in the bedroom, okay? They're interested in all of the different kinks and variations when it comes to sex, all of the taboo things. I mean, if there was ever like a 50 Shades of Grey placement, Mars in the eighth house would probably be that. And maybe Uranus a little bit. But we'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, Mars in the eighth is harbors a lot of sexual energy. They may have been introduced to sexual things when they were young, very young, unfortunately. And you know, I talk about the trauma and everything like that. This could be a placement where you are maybe a victim of sexual assault, or you could have been the one who was doing the assaulting. This is definitely that type of a placement. Also, there could be a lot of like trauma and a lot of things you kind of have to overcome as it pertains to sex. A lot of things you may have been taught incorrectly, and you kind of need to explore that. This is a very sexual exploration type of placement. Like, don't hold back. The ironic thing, though, is because your Mars is in the eighth house, I understand that the eighth house is about sex, as is Mars, but there's a hidden aspect of this placement. You know what I'm saying? Mars in the eighth, their sexuality is not on Front Street. They're not like, put it out there. It's not like Mars in the first house. It's not like Mars in the fifth or even Mars in the 10th. This is very like secretive. This is very private. This is like, I know what I'm doing when I get in the bedroom, but like, you're not going to know that by just looking at me. Like, you're not going to see that my sexuality and the things that I can do or what I am willing to put out there. That's something that I'm only keeping for that special someone. You know what I'm saying? That's not to say that Mars in the eighth house isn't susceptible to sleeping around. I always say this about the eighth house, although they're looking for these intimate bonds and things like that, they always think that they can trap somebody with the sex, AKA with pussy, okay? So you have this feeling like, oh, I'm going to be able to seduce this person and I'm just going to have them mesmerized and they're going to be trapped by my smoldering, eighth house scorpionic Plutonian eyes and shit like that. And I can just totally get them by the sex and make them fall in love with me. Kind of like what I said about Venus in the eighth. Be careful with that mindset, because it doesn't always pan out that way. But you definitely have that inclination. You definitely think that what you have the goods and what you have to offer is like the best. So where the hell are you going? Like, why are you going to other people? Like, because it's all here. Like, that's literally how you feel. You know what I'm saying? And also, obviously, the eighth house in general is prone to be, into like sex work and stuff like that. Mars in the eighth definitely could be prone to sex work, but not just like being an escort or anything. Actually, being a stripper could be prominent for Mars in the eighth house, because Mars in the eighth house, Mars involves like athleticism and, movement and stuff like that. So that the pole dancing, that is some exercise for that ass for Mars in the eighth house. Yes, the pole dance. Do you see those girls when they be doing them tricks and stuff like that? That is a way for you to get in shape. Okay. So definitely that everything is of the utmost intensity with Mars in the eighth house. This is one of the most intense placements. This is someone who is very much about, like I said before, deep connections and understanding, that kind of psychoanalysis of people and things like that. You really are trying to get to the bottom and unearth things. Mars in the eighth house can definitely have the propensity to be a criminal. They could be out in these streets. They can, have the, potential to do some really, harmful things on the dark side. So, you got to make sure that you channel that into, something positive and, do your research on it, because Mars in the eighth, they love to research anyway. So it's a great time, to do that, whether you're studying like spirits or like occult studies or like mediumship. Talking to the dead is a big eighth house thing. So definitely with the mediumship. Also, just being able to channel that aggression that you have, particularly the sexual aggression that you have. I think I mentioned this about another placement, maybe Moon in the eighth house and Mars in the eighth house. Yeah, masturbation is a thing. If you don't have somebody to have sex with on a regular basis, get that masturbation. It's like exercising almost, in a way. Is you got to release that. It's necessary, or else you'll be pent up like just a ball of aggression. Speaking of aggression, Mars in the eighth house is very they don't really see red, they see black. Okay, so you do not want to get on the wrong side or the bad side of somebody with Mars in the eighth house. You don't want to lie to them. You don't want to betray them. They are going to get loud, especially if they have like Mars and Aries in the eighth house. Please, they're going to get loud. They're going to get rambunctious, and you're not going to see this coming, because usually it's real cool, calm, and collected, depending on what the other placements are doing. Because, Mars in the eighth house likes to, creep, observe, see what's going on. They're not really all, out there like that. But if you piss them off, another crime of passion placement. Let's just say that. This is also another crime of passion placement. They could do real dirty, like they could be like having sex with you and get the knife and just start. I know that's like a really bad visual, but I told y'all that this is gonna be a hot mess. So, I like to do my TV and movie anecdotes when I talk about these placements. So we're going to get into that aspect, because I saw it and I was like, oh, this relationship is so eighth house, and particularly Mars in the eighth house, because of the aggression and the toxicity. There's a new movie on Netflix called Malcolm and Marie, and it's starring John David Washington, who's Denzel Washington's son, and Zendaya. And the whole movie is black and white, and it's just them like in their house. And it's basically 2 hours of them arguing. But it's like, it's so much trauma behind everything that they're saying, and toxicity, and trying to pull each other down, worse than the last person. You know what I said about Mercury in the eighth house? Well, then you got Mars in the eighth house, so you got the aggression part of it. So you got the yelling and the screaming, and I'm going to tear you down harder than you tore me down. I'm going to go for the jugular. I am going to go for the lowest of the low. And they did. They were just tearing each other down to shreds. And mind you, this was a couple, like they're supposed to be in love. But you know what it's like with that love in the eighth house. It's all about the pleasure and pain. It's all about feeling, that pain. And I would venture to think that this particular couple in this series, like if they were to break up and they were to meet new people or something like that, that were, like tame, or actually were nice to them and treated them right, that they would think that they were boring, or they would think that they didn't challenge them, or they didn't have enough oomph or anything like that. Because eighth house people, you need a little something extra in your relationship, okay? Especially Mars in the eighth house. You need a little, like, maybe y'all need to put the boxing gloves on, for real. Like, I'm not advocating for domestic violence. This placement can potentially bring that about, though. I'm not advocating for that, but it's absolutely thing with the eighth house to want trauma in your life. And I don't know why. Why do we want trauma? It's almost like it makes life more interesting, or it makes the relationship more interesting. And in the things that they were talking about in the movie, look, I'm low-key doing a review on this movie, but you have to watch it. Go to Netflix, Malcolm and Marie. It's so eighth house. But the things that they were discussing were really deep rooted things. It's not like they were arguing about like frivolous things. You know what I'm saying? It's really like deep rooted issues and things like that. So, and the eighth house is all about getting to the bottom of things and getting to the depths of it. So it's really like this trauma house. And I don't like that aspect of it. But because I'm an eighth houser, it's like I enjoy watching trauma. I'm not gonna lie. I'm one of those people. Guilty. You know how you're like in the AA meetings or something like that, or Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, and you're like, hi, I enjoy watching trauma. You know what I'm saying? Because as long as it's not happening to you, you enjoy watching it and evaluating it and things like that. So that's also very Mars in the eighth house. Mars in the eighth can have the potential to unfortunately result in the death of a partner. You may be contributing to the death of your own partner, like I said before. Definitely, and as it pertains to other people's money, because Mars is a masculine planet, you may receive money from men and stuff like that. Like, let's say you're a woman and you're like you're in the sex industry or something like that. Obviously, your clients are going to be men, unless you swing all the ways and nobody's discriminating. But a lot of your clients are going to be men, so that's where you're going to be getting a lot of your money. Insurance settlements, life insurance policies, inheritances could come from men in your life, spouses, things of that nature. And, death is, I don't want to say it's not something that you're afraid of per se, but you kind of may like, no, that's another planet. I was going to say that you may have the potential to be indifferent about death, but I feel like that's more Uranus. But Mars in the eighth house, so just eighth house energy, you're like so used to kind of death around you and like the constant transformation and evolution of people and things in your life, that it's just like, it can kind of feel like another Tuesday, low key. Like it's horrible. It's horrible, but it's just like the trauma you're used to. You're used to the fighting to get to the next level. You're used to the research and deep to evolve and things like that. You're used to the deaths, unfortunately, with the people, in your lives. And it's not difficult for you to be in a field or have a job that deals with death, like being a coroner or working at a funeral home or being a crime scene investigator and stuff like that. Like, that's like, it's another day, blood. What's that? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So it's very, Mars is all about the action, obviously, but it's action in like the darkness, like the taboo things, and things of that nature. So really, really, really interesting placement. I'm trying to make sure that I'm not missing anything with Mars in the eighth. I mentioned, the transformation and things of that nature. This could give you a very, like, as a woman, and I know I talk a lot from a woman's perspective, so I apologize to the men who watch this channel, particularly the straight men, but I'm a woman, so I do speak from a woman's perspective, but you can still apply these types of things. But this could be like, the opposite of, having Venus in the eighth, or perhaps Moon in the eighth, where you may, transition to a man, or you just may feel very masculine and very aggressive as it pertains to your sexual relationships. Like, even if you're the woman, like all women and everything like that, you still may wear the pants in the relationship, particularly when it comes to the intimacy part. Okay. Yeah, so that's definitely a big thing to remember. And I'm trying to think if anything else stands out. I feel like I just talked about sex, but we're talking about Mars in the eighth. So right, we're touching on all of the elements of the eighth house when we're talking about these planets and things. So certain planets are going to have certain focal points. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely wanted to highlight that in this video. So all right, so that's all I have for you. Again, if you have this placement and you want to add anything, please feel free to do so in the comments below. And remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.